I am 84 years old now, and I wake up each morning surprised that I am still here. At this age, you don't wake up with plans. You wake up with memories, and some of them sit at the edge of the bed before your feet even touch the floor. My husband has been gone 11 years. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like he belonged to another lifetime entirely. What lingers most isn't the dramatic things. It's the quiet ones, the things we didn't say because we thought we had time. He was 50 when the changes began, though neither of us called them changes. We called them normal. That word can hide a lot. He was a strong man, not loud about it, just steady, the kind of man who fixed the fence before you noticed it leaning, the kind who didn't sit down until everyone else had eaten. His hands were always rough, his shoulders wide. He carried himself like someone who believed his body would always obey him. When he turned 50, he laughed about getting older, made jokes about reading glasses and gray hair. But there were other things he didn't joke about, things he didn't mention at all. I noticed first in small ways. He took longer in the bathroom, stood at the sink with his hands braced against it, staring at his reflection. Sometimes he would shift his weight, uncomfortable, but if I asked what was wrong, he would shrug. Just getting older, he'd say. That was the explanation for everything. In our 50s, we were busy still. The children were grown but not fully settled. There were weddings to help pay for, grandchildren arriving, work obligations that didn't slow down just because we had more candles on our cake. He believed in productivity, in usefulness. If he was moving, he was fine. That was his logic. He started walking in the evenings, said the doctor mentioned cholesterol, he cut back on salt, bought vitamins he kept forgetting to take. There was an effort there, I see that now, but it was surface level. He cared about his heart in theory, about his numbers on paper. He did not care for the private parts of himself with the same attention. We never spoke openly about his penis, about blood flow, about changes in erections or discomfort. Those words did not exist in our marriage vocabulary. Even after 30 years together, there were nights when he would turn away from me in bed, not unkindly, just quietly. If his body did not respond the way it used to, he would clear his throat and say he was tired. I would say I was tired too. Two people protecting each other from embarrassment. That's how it felt. Protective, gentle even, but it built distance brick by brick. Men of his generation were not taught about intimate care beyond the basics. Wash, dry, don't talk about it. See a doctor only if you cannot stand the pain. He believed that if something was truly wrong, it would shout. He did not understand that the body whispers first. In his late 50s, he mentioned once that urinating had become a bit slow. That was his phrase, a bit slow. He said it like he was commenting on traffic. I asked if he would tell the doctor. It's just age, he said. All men deal with it. That sentence is so common. All men deal with it, as if that makes neglect acceptable. He went to his regular doctor every year for blood pressure checks. He rolled up his sleeve dutifully, nodded at advice about exercise. But when it came to prostate exams or seeing a urologist, he hesitated. I remember one afternoon he came home with a pamphlet tucked into his jacket pocket. I found it later on the kitchen counter. It was about men over 50 and prostate health. There were diagrams, words like enlargement, screening, circulation, dysfunction. He folded it once and slipped it into a drawer. We never spoke about it. Looking back, I think he felt that talking about that part of his body made him less solid somehow, as if admitting change would unravel him. There is something cruel about how masculinity was defined for men like him. Strength meant silence, endurance meant avoidance. If you could still go to work, still mow the lawn, still carry groceries, then you were fine. But inside, his body was shifting. In his early 60s, the distance in our bed became more noticeable. He would try sometimes, determined, almost stubborn. When it didn't work the way it once had, he would grow quiet for days afterward. Not angry, just withdrawn. I wanted to tell him that intimacy was more than performance, that I did not measure him by firmness or stamina. But I didn't know how to begin that conversation without making him feel exposed. So we both pretended. That's the slow cost. Not one big mistake, just small avoidances. He began to wake at night to use the bathroom, once, then twice, sometimes 3 times. I would hear him shuffle down the hallway, hear the pause, hear the faint sigh. In the morning, he would complain about poor sleep, never about the cause. When he was 65, he retired. I thought retirement would soften him, give him time to focus on his health properly, create space for doctor appointments, for conversations, for routines that included more than yard work and television. But retirement did something else. It made him feel older overnight. Without work, he felt less necessary, and instead of tending carefully to his aging body, he seemed to resent it, as if it had betrayed him by slowing down. He stopped the evening walks, put on a little weight, complained about fatigue, but blamed it on boredom. There was one night I remember clearly when he sat at the edge of the bed and said very quietly, "Something's not right." I sat up. The room was dim. The clock glowed red beside us. He admitted that urinating had become painful sometimes, that he felt pressure low in his abdomen, that erections were rare now, and when they happened, they didn't last. He spoke quickly, like he wanted to get it over with. I told him we would call the doctor in the morning. Morning came. He felt slightly better. The urgency faded, and he said, "Let's give it a week." We gave it months. That is how delay works. It convinces you that relief means resolution. He finally saw a specialist at 71. By then the symptoms were impossible to ignore. Blood in his urine, persistent discomfort, a heaviness he could no longer brush aside. The word cancer entered our kitchen like a stranger who refused to leave. Prostate cancer, advanced. I remember how still he became when the doctor said it, not shocked, not dramatic, just very still, as if something inside him had quietly confirmed what he had feared. "I should have gone sooner," he said later, sitting at the table. There is no answer to that sentence. Treatment was not simple. Surgery took pieces of his confidence along with the tumor. Radiation drained him. Medications changed his body further. There were side effects he found humiliating: leakage, impotence, fatigue so heavy it bent his shoulders. He struggled most with the loss of control. He apologized often for needing help in the bathroom, for stains on his pajamas, for not being a proper husband anymore. I hated that phrase. In those years, I learned more about male health than I ever expected, about how blood flow supports not just sexual function, but overall vitality, about how hygiene becomes more important as skin thins and immune systems weaken, about how routine checkups after 50 are not optional suggestions but necessary maintenance. I learned it too late for prevention. I would help him bathe, gently, carefully. I would remind him to dry thoroughly, to apply creams the nurse recommended to prevent irritation. These were small acts, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with dignity. Sometimes he would close his eyes and say, "I never thought it would be like this." Neither did I. We had assumed aging would be gradual but manageable. We did not imagine how pride could speed up decline. There were days when he seemed almost angry at his body, as if it had betrayed the image he carried of himself. I wanted to tell him that caring for his penis, his prostate, his circulation, his hygiene was not weakness, it was wisdom. But by then we were in response mode, not prevention. The turning point came not with a dramatic collapse, but with exhaustion. His body simply grew tired of fighting. Infections became frequent. Hospital visits increased. One afternoon, sitting by the window in his hospital room, he looked at me and said, "I thought I had more time." That sentence is heavier than any diagnosis. He did not just mean time to live. He meant time to take better care of himself, time to ask questions he had written down but never voiced, time to swallow his embarrassment and say, "I need help." After he died at 73, I found a small notebook in his dresser. Inside were questions he had been too ashamed to ask out loud. Is reduced blood flow reversible? How often should men over 50 see a urologist? Is daily hygiene different after 60? What are early signs of prostate trouble? He had been thinking about it, quietly educating himself, carrying the worry alone. That is the part that undoes me even now. We had shared a bed for nearly 5 decades, shared money, children, grief, laughter, but he faced his most vulnerable concerns in silence. I am 84 now. My own body is unreliable. I see my doctors regularly. I ask blunt questions about bones, hormones, bladder control. I do not blush anymore. Age strips away modesty, whether you like it or not. There is a strange freedom in that. Sometimes younger women ask me what advice I would give about marriage. They expect something romantic or wise. What I tell them is simpler. Do not let embarrassment decide your health. Men especially are taught to endure quietly, to treat intimate problems as private failures instead of medical realities. They are told to maintain confidence at all costs. But confidence built on silence is fragile. If I could return to when he was 50, I would sit across from him and say, "Your body deserves the same care you give your truck. Regular maintenance, honest inspection, professional help when something changes." I would tell him that seeing a urologist is not an admission of weakness. That daily hygiene matters more with age, not less. That monitoring blood pressure and blood flow protects more than the heart. That erections changing is information, not shame. I would say these things plainly. Instead, we tiptoed. The slow cost of that tiptoeing was not visible at first. It was measured in postponed appointments, in nights of quiet disappointment, in questions swallowed because they felt awkward. We thought aging was the enemy. It was not aging, it was delay. Now I sit in a smaller home. His chair is gone, his boots are gone, but his absence fills every room. In the evenings, I sometimes rest my hand on the table where he once sat after that diagnosis. I can still see the way his fingers curled inward as if holding something invisible. Pride, perhaps. I loved him fiercely. I still do. And love does not erase regret. It just sits beside it. If you are a man past 50, or you love one, understand this. Your health is not just your own. Your silence does not protect anyone. It isolates you. Taking care of intimate health, washing carefully, checking for changes, seeing specialists when needed, maintaining circulation through movement, asking about medications, is not vanity. It is stewardship of the years you still have. And those years are not guaranteed. I am at the far end now. I know what it is to count time in smaller units. I know what it is to wish for one ordinary afternoon back. He thought he had more time to be proactive, more time to address the whispers before they became alarms. We all think that, but bodies do not negotiate with pride. If this reaches you in some quiet moment, let it settle, not as fear, not as shame, just as truth from an old woman who has seen what silence costs. Care for yourself while the changes are small. Speak before embarrassment builds walls. Let the people who love you walk beside you into uncomfortable rooms. I would give anything to have walked into that specialist's office with him 10 years earlier, to have held his hand then instead of later in a hospital bed. I am 84 years old. My voice trembles sometimes when I tell this story. But the message is steady. There is no weakness in tending to your own body. The weakness is in pretending it does not need tending. He was a good man, a strong man, a loving husband. None of that changed when his body did. I just wish he had believed that sooner. The light outside my window is fading now. Evening comes earlier than I expect these days. I sit and watch it, thinking about how ordinary our life was, how full of chances. He thought he had more time. We both did. And that is the quietest tragedy of all.